Hello and welcome to Section 3 of Mastering TypeScript. This section is on enforcing strictness. Specifically, we're going to look at how we can make the compiler stricter in order to help us catch bugs before they happen. In the first video, we'll talk about reducing mistakes while being implicit. Then, in the second video, getting serious with strict null checks. If you're not familiar with strict null checks, that will be a very exciting topic. Then on compiler options for added support, enforcing rules and coding standards, and finally an interesting video on verifying our code using syntax tree navigation. That will be a video showing how you can enforce custom application rules by inspecting our source code. Now we move on to the first video of this section, and it's on reducing mistakes from implicit types. In this video, we're going to look at how we can make the compiler stricter. First, we'll look at not allowing implicit any types, then the this parameter, and how we can force not allowing an implicit this, and finally, at not allowing implicit returns. In previous videos, we talked about why it's important to avoid the any type, and implicit any types. Specifically here, we're talking about how we can reduce mistakes while being implicit, and avoiding implicit any types is a great way to reduce mistakes. Unless they're protected against or watched out for, implicit any types can be a cause for bugs in an application. Taking a look at a previous example, here in order storage of our server app, we have an insert update method that takes an order. A danger is if we forget to type this parameter, because then this parameter would be implicitly typed as any. That means that the caller could call this method and accidentally provide the wrong type of object. To eliminate the chance of creating implicit any types by accident, we can enable the no implicit any compiler option. The no implicit any compiler option will cause implicit any types to throw a compile error when they're created. To enable it, we can open up tsconfig.json in our server app and add a compiler option for no implicit any to be true. Note that we also want to update our web app's tsconfig so that it also has the benefit of no implicit any. Now if we go back to order storage in the server app, you can see we now get a compile error that the parameter order implicitly has an any type. This is great. We've so easily made it practically impossible for us to accidentally create an implicit any type. From now on, when we accidentally create one, the compiler will point it out to us. That's what we want. Moving on, as you should know, JavaScript has the idea of the this keyword. The value of the this keyword depends on how the function is called, and that could be done explicitly or implicitly, but mostly implicitly. If you don't know about the this keyword, I recommend doing some reading about it because it's out of scope for this video course. Here we have a log function that takes a message and calls the log method on the this keyword, providing that message. The problem here is that the this keyword's type is implicitly typed as any. You can see that here if we hover the mouse over the this keyword. In this case, the implicit any compiler option does not save us. We have to enable an additional compiler option, and that's the no implicit this compiler option. So we can open up tsconfig.json, add the no implicit this compiler option, and remember we also want to do this in our web app's tsconfig as well, so that both these applications benefit from this. Go back to our example. And great, the compiler is now telling us that this is implicitly typed as any, because it does not have a type annotation. That's what we want. Now we'll add a type annotation for specifying the this keyword type, and we can do that by creating a first parameter with the name this, and then add a type annotation. In this case, we're going to type it as console. Another advantage of no implicit this is now we get an error when using this in the global context. Finally, in this video, we're going to talk about eliminating implicit returns. So what are implicit returns? Here in number helper, we have a toString method that takes an input that could be a number or a string. When it's a number, we want it to do one action, and when it's a string, we want it to do another action. You can see here there are two separate return statements, one that's done when it's a number and another done when it's a string. An issue that might happen while programming is that we might forget to have a return statement in all scenarios. For example, let's remove the else clause here. Now you can see we don't get an error, and the function will implicitly return undefined when this if statement's check for a number is false. That might not be a big deal in some scenarios, but most of the time not having a return statement for all branches in a function is an indication that you made a mistake. It's best to prevent this and force ourselves to be explicit with our returns. To do that, you probably guessed it, we can enable the no implicit returns compiler option in tsconfig.json. With this option enabled, you can now see we're getting an error in number helper, and we can make this go away by ensuring all branches return a value when using the return statement in a function. In this video, we looked at how we can reduce mistakes while being implicit. I hope you'll enable these compiler options in your application to help prevent mistakes.